So welcome everyone to this panel discussion, Women Speak, Driving Inclusivity in Tech. First of all, a big shout out to every one of you there and for the panelists here, because this path is so long that every small or big step really matters. So happy to be here. In the next 45 or 50 minutes, we will share experiences, learnings, perspectives, potentially some mantras and strategies too. From all of us here, we'll take questions at the end. And I think we'll do that by setting the context in just a bit, but introductions first, very briefly. Thank you for the gracious introduction to me. I am your moderator for this session, Barsha Panda. I am the CEO of a business consulting practice, Dark Street. I founded this after about 20 years, almost 20 years, of working with technology MNCs in Singapore, in the US, and in Europe. A large part of my career has been about driving transformation. And it has been about changing mindsets. It has been about changing status quos in the context of business and showing value so that the investments into changes continue. So that's me. Why don't we start with Meenal, a brief introduction about you, and then we flow and we get onto it.
Sure. So good afternoon. My name is Meenal. I am a technology business leader with over 25 years of experience. I've worked with small, big, very, very large organizations in the past 25 years. Two mantras that I carry for my professional life and, well, to a large personal life as well is that technology is here to make a positive difference. You know, to a customer, to a individual person, how can technology really help to smoothen somebody's life, improve their bottom lines, and so on and so forth. So once again, as Barsha was saying, about making a positive impact on that. Apart from my professional, career, I have a very strong focus on diversity and inclusion. I speak quite popularly at women's colleges and a lot of forums like these about how we can make a difference in a little way by, sharing our experiences, sharing some sorrowful experiences and some positive experiences to make a difference. So that's a little about me, and probably over to Danielle now.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Judith. I am a managing director of Nallanda.com. That's a web tool that is empowering companies in Mexico to be compliant with the requirements of the government. And the vision of that company is to help people be happier at the workplace and to manage risk. So personally, I'm very happy to be living this life where I use technology to help others. And I'm also very happy and amazed to see so many fantastic women here today. I've seen the industry changing from before. You didn't see many women around, but now there's more and more of us. And I think it's fantastic to have the chance to be here, to have an opportunity to come up with new perspectives and new ways of thinking for women, new words and new behaviors. No? So we're going to be driving change for the best, always improving. And thank you, everybody, for being here.
Thank you and hello. My name is Manuela-Bianca, and I'm very happy to be here with you for this amazing discussion what we will have, of course. I am the founder and the CEO of T.E.C.K.Y. This is a tech advisory company in the area of artificial intelligence, blockchain, and Internet of Vehicle. So we have this discussion about smart cities, smart happiness. Internet of Vehicles is a part of this. So, having started as a software developer, I have been more than 20 years at the forefront of disruptive technologies. I have rolled out products in software-defined vehicles, in blockchain and biometrics, just to name a few. Transitioning from a software developer to a C-level executive, I have gained deep knowledge about the challenges that tech and digital companies have, but also about the challenges of women in technology on each and every level. So I'm happy to be here, and please.
Thank you so much. I think at the outset, I'm probably the youngest on the table, so I'm grateful to be in the august company of such accomplished women and probably need to chat with all of them one-on-one after we finish this session. So more questions, and I wish I was sitting in the audience maybe today. But my name is Tanya Singh, and I currently lead the TMT practice at KPMG, but today I'm representing two other initiatives that are very close to my heart, and both of them involve knowledge and technology startups. So I was raised in the SaaS and PaaS industry in India, mostly around aggregator models of various industries, right, from real estate to auto to finance, and I've lived through times wherein I've been the only female in most of the teams that I've been part of, and have tried insistently not to overcompensate and still be true to myself. And the two initiatives that I currently run, one of course focuses on knowledge share globally to really enable a 30-minute quick chat between people from all disciplines, whether marketing, planning, consulting, creative roles, and technology, to really interact with each other and be able to build a more cohesive mindset. And the second initiative is I'm a mentor with the prestigious Hult Prize, which is run by the United Nations and the Bill Clinton Health Foundation, which essentially celebrates students from across 120 countries, 2 lakh participants every year to build solutions for a very forward, inclusive world. And this year's theme, interestingly, is fashion and retail. But more about it, I'll hand it over to Barsha to lead the panel, please.
Thank you, Tanya, and thank you, everyone. To set the context of inclusivity, it's interesting, right, that tech by itself creates more inclusivity in the world. We are able to do a lot many more things because of tech than without it. Many sets of people at different levels of marginalization are able to really participate in the world more fully because of tech. And yet the process of building, sharing, and selling tech somehow is not as inclusive, right? It's pretty ironic, but I think the conversation about inclusivity in tech, and especially women in tech and business, has moved today. It used to be something about, workplace practices. This used to be fairness in employment. It used to be about growing leaders to very senior levels. And at one point, the key argument was it's, after all, business value, because diverse voices at the top meant people could engage with challenges, conflicts, confrontations, and identify different opportunities. So having women at the top made business value for it kind of, crafted a good future for business. But today, if you look at inclusivity and the need to have women and, frankly, a great diversity in race, ethnicity, in special needs, right in the heart of technology is because of the new and emerging technologies that are coming up. Because today the question is about what technologies should be built, how should they be built, what kind of regulations are necessary, philosophically, ethically, actually. So if you look at AI, you look at VR, you look at metaverse, there's a whole set of complexity at the heart, and it's only fair that a more representative voice takes decisions about how to shape it and how to influence it, how to bring out in the world, right? So the need to have women, and I believe personally, it's one of the few things I'd be personally sharing my opinion, because otherwise I'm going to modulate the conversation, is that I think women need to be involved at all levels, because the diversity of view should be captured at all levels of value creation when a technology is built up and not only at the top. The progress on this, though, isn't as clear as the need for it. Right? Even though a lot many more women work today in technology, Tanya mentioned, like if you look at years back and now, a lot many more work, but it's still 25% of the workforce. Women at leadership positions are single digit. 10% is great. That's where we are at, right? If we look at hard technology roles, Stack Overflow, which is one of the largest developer community in the world, has 92% users are male. And on one hand, we have Linda Yaccarino becoming the CEO of Twitter, great stuff. On the other, we have women who leave a big Indian IT services giant because the work from home policies get rolled back to an extent, right? So it's a story of some steps forward, some steps back, yeah? And in that, I come to my first question to all of you all, because it looks like a systemic change is absolutely essential, and not just for long-term goals, but short-term, mid-term, to have meaningful impact, right? So, Meenal, I started with you last, so let me just turn it over this way. So, Tanya, tell us, and all of you all, tell us, what do you think are the institutional changes that would have the most meaningful impact to drive inclusivity? And by institutional, it could be an organization, it could be startup funding. Take your pick.
So, I want to really make it very first principled and give you a simple answer. To be honest, I think a lot of these problems, as we call them, or problem statements, can actually be solved very easily by two things. And you've been in transformation, right, Barsha? So you would know this. And the challenges with transformation, whether we deal with organizations, societies, or people. Unfortunately, it took a lot of years and generations to come where we're at. So let's not expect change to happen overnight as well. What that means is that in 2003, if Norway was the first country to come up with regulation or saying quotas, or 40% quotas for executive committee members should be women. And in India, a 2013 Companies Act dictates that the Nifty 500 companies should have, again, representation from women. The difference in those two cultures is that, well, in Norway, because the population was less, it actually led to a more golden skirt phenomena, which means that all companies were competing for the same women. And in India, unfortunately, what it led to was that while there was enough representation because of compliance, unfortunately, it stuck to compliance and the conversation never moved forward. And so really, I think, in effect, all the leaders at all the top companies, regardless of their gender, should have a bias mentor, for sure. And it's very hard for a 30 or 40-year-old to change. So I think the only systemic change from an institutional or a societal perspective, which is why I chose to represent both the educational institutions I run today, is to be able to impact young minds, to have these conversations better. What I'm saying is that gender identities for men and women have traditionally been different. So in a developing or emerging market, and there's a lot of them, right? Nigeria, India, Indonesia, Philippines, etc. While a man develops a work identity by 25, a woman at the same age is actually being told by her parents to get married. So the conversation lapses there. Number two, when you come to developed economies wherein systems have actually worked, what unfortunately ends up happening is that gender is, sex is a biological concept, but gender is a societal concept. So only society, if it truly comes together and everyone's invested in that process, is when we can truly have change, which again brings me back to the fact that we need to have bias mentors, and then we need to prepare the young people today to be brought up in a more inclusive world, which is an attitude wherein they understand that diversity in itself is inherent. And I'll pause there.
Manuela?
Yes, diversity. It's something what we need, or it's something what we don't need? It's a very interesting question, and I want to answer this question not only as a woman, but also as an AI expert. So probably everyone who is working in this area knows that the better, the more diverse the data we have to train the AI, the better the results will become. So statistically speaking, diversity is important. It helps us for more profitability and for more growth in the company. The problem what we facing, I'm talking about the C-level executives, most of them, they are acting and deciding according to hard KPIs. So it's very, very difficult to measure inclusivity, diversity with a hard KPI. We have a feeling, a gut feeling, we have to do it because it's worth, but we cannot measure. So it's the same dilemma we had with cybersecurity or occupational safety or data protection. I can talk only for Europe, but it was the same there. Till we had problem with cybersecurity, nobody wanted to, no CEO wanted to invest in this area. So you have already talked about some regulation in Europe, some women quota. We saw that in the last year, we saw in the last year that we have good results, and I would like to encourage the people to think about this, and Europe maybe to extend this also for middle-sized companies. So regulation is also, in my opinion, something which would bring a very quick solution and will probably show that we have good results and all the CEOs and decision makers will gain this confidence. Is it worth to try it?
Great. So we went from biases to regulation to AI stats. Fantastic. This is looking up. Meenal.
Sure. So since you're talking about the institutional changes, and I have had the good luck of working in organizations of different sizes, there are a few practical things that we need to do. She spoke about some long-term, inane thinking changes, but there are some action-oriented changes that currently we all require. So some, the standard ones in terms of higher jobs descriptions itself are biased. Several times if you Google a job description, it is so biased towards a male candidate that it's very rare that somebody will fit into that scale unless force-fitted. So right from, looking at designing jobs with an unbiased view. So I'm not saying that they should be biased towards women, but at least it should be unbiased, So it begins right from there. Couple of other changes that I believe can be, implemented in a measurable way are in terms of tackling the unconscious bias that happens at a workplace. It could be over a cup of coffee, to that, hanging. I popularly say this. So I'm a non-smoker, and I have had missed out on several bonding occasions with my colleagues who are heavily into smoking. Yeah. So I was even encouraged at one point in time to hang around with them in order to develop a bond. So one needs to, tackle these unsaid issues and not brush them under the carpet anymore, honestly. Equality in pay is something, we all would want, aspire as women, and I'm sure many of my male colleagues and counterparts also believe that there should be equality, but it's time for action now, much more than discussion, in my opinion. And the last part, as Manuela correctly said, is to establish accountability. Unless it becomes a KPI, unless it becomes a consistent, measurable point of view in the company's or the organization's performance year on year, this factor will be discussed several times in forums like these and be taken back just as a record. So some KPIs around and measurable ones consistent over a period of time are very much required. These are, in my opinion, some short-term actions which will also lead to confidence in building the long-term goals, right? So that's what I think about the institutional changes that can be brought about with measurable outcomes.
Judith.
Thank you. Yes, so I am more along your lines when it comes to applying solutions that are practical and that can be implemented right away instead of course, changing the regulation is important, but while we're waiting for all of that to happen, let's just start today by implementing new policies and changes. And one of the things that I would do as a recruiter, for instance, is describe a job in terms of the main capabilities that I'm looking for and have candidates fill up that questionnaire without telling me the name or the gender of the candidate. And then I have my first filter, and I removed already the first bias, and then I pass it on to whoever the interviewer is going to be, and then we can have a more open discussion face-to-face. No? So that's one of the things that I would implement right away. But it's important to realize that the company they don't want to miss out in talent. So the more we develop these practices to have more fair and open and transparent and unbiased recruitment processes and career development processes, the better it's going to be for the company, and we're going to increase productivity. And I also think that when teams are mixed, so very diverse in terms of their mentality, their approach, and it can be a gender thing or not, really. But let's have mixed teams that can compete within each other in a healthy way and trigger each other to come up with better solutions. And the way I envision the future, a future like that, is only by having more and more women included in leadership positions in this industry and in every industry, actually.
Great, thank you very much. I think all of you touched upon one particular thing, so it's interesting that the next question I have in mind is somewhere there. It's probably because of that, which is, we all spoke about bias, and I think any of us who've been at work are aware of it deeply. So this whole thing, right, that women need to participate more. Women need to speak up and speak out to be heard, because this issue is really about all sides coming together to solve it. And yet, when you do that, the tags that get associated with you very often is either overly ambitious, not a team player, and these tags sort of dog you about in your career. They actually have repercussions, right? So my question is, very quickly, briefly, could you give some navigation around what you've done or what women could do to speak up, to speak out, and yet get around without damaging either productivity or their careers?
May I go first? My answer is, again, very simple: resilience. Like, I've been ousted out of jobs for being me all my life. So you see, like, about 12 jobs in 12 years, and still going and still very employable. So, but yes, I've seen this with a lot of senior leaders in India, of course, because that generation was very different, wherein women were overcompensating both at work and home. And without judgment of that societal evolution process, I think the last generation was used to, like I said, sex is biological, gender is social. But the last generation was used to roles defined for both genders, right?
Yeah.
Which is why the same men who were recruiting women at work were probably, and trying to empower them at workplace, were disempowering their own wives at home. And so there was always like this difference in how power equations are defined, and I see that as well, because I did get married at one point of time. Sorry for sharing that. But I've faced that literally in my personal life, wherein I'm the only woman at home, sort of managing it as well, but then the expectation is for me to sort of behave like the nurturer and caregiver at home, and at the same time I'm recruited for very tough roles at my workplace, right? And it got very confusing for me over that journey. But today, I think, safe to say, one is sometimes we can have self-fulfilling biases, which means that the system may not necessarily be pushing us down as much as our past experience is really holding ourselves back, which is where these behaviors come, right? And at the end of the day, I think if everyone was to have empathy and constantly check themselves for biases, maybe workplaces would not be, maybe it would be more effective from that perspective. I'll rest there.
Thank you. So, what I experience in my life regarding diversity, sometimes from time to time, I've got stuck in my career. And I have learned from negotiation, if you get stuck in negotiation, you have to change the perspective. So, this is why I would like to recommend to the women to think not like an employee, but to think like an entrepreneur. So when I was 14, I was sitting with my mom, dad, and my grandpa, three great persons, and talking about how I will do my money, how I will earn my money. And we're not asking, do I do career, how to do a career, how to be a tech woman, but we try to find out a roadmap, an answer, how can we do our money. This is very important because in 30 years, almost 30 years career what I have, you will not be probably not only employee. We have to change. I was working with my own company. I was working as freelancer. I was working at university. So it's important to have a roadmap how to make your money, to think like an entrepreneur. And if you have this roadmap, it's important to build your brand. You, as a person, you have a personal brand. So my brand is, I want to make money with software disruptive technology. I wasn't aware about AI, about blockchain, and whatever when I took this decision years ago, but I was sure I will go this road, and I built my personal branding around this. This is one important thing. And the second important thing is to understand your target group. So if I go to talk with a CEO, now, they are very focusing on growth and profitability of the company. So I try to translate my technical skills in their profitability for the company. If I talk with a senior manager, a director, or whatever in charge of delivering projects, I try to translate my technology skills in explaining him how amazing I can deliver these projects. So this is my recommendation. Just think as an entrepreneur, build your personal brand, and be aware about your target group.
Well, think like an entrepreneur. Judith, no
That
pressure.
sounds good.
Just tell us what you do about
I
this.
love thinking like an entrepreneur, so I can only agree with you on that. I think, yeah, resilience, as you said before, consistency. And as a woman, I faced, like, one time I joined a company and I was the only woman on the whole floor in the whole building. So that was a little bit, overwhelming, to say the least, but the way you go through it is in the beginning you have to be strong and very professional, so just accept that there's going to be a little bit of resistance, and it's like when you're going to surf a wave. In the beginning you just need to get that momentum and get on it, and then you're going to be sliding with the wind, right? But the way to go through it is to always have consistent, good results. So I think as women, we have a lot of pressure to really deliver and to really have high quality work and know what we're talking about. If you do that, if you do your homework, in your room when no one is watching, that's going to show when you go out there and interact with the people in your company. So really be an expert. That would be my advice to other women. Really be an expert on what you're doing, because we as women, we are required to go that extra mile still, right? So we really need to have a lot of substance. I like a saying that they have in Texas. I am originally from that area of the world, North America. They say, have hat and cattle. It refers to the people working in the ranch. Some of them are cowboys with a hat, but no cattle, so they don't have substance. They haven't proved themselves through hard work and through delivering the results, right? So in this case, we women need to have that hat. But we need a lot more cattle most of the time than many of the men around. But they're amazing men. I'm not attacking anyone.
So, yeah, I think pretty much summarizing what each one of you said is about results, because at the end, the role is, you're empowered into that position to deliver irrespective of your gender. So sometimes eyes on the scoreboard makes absolute sense, and not getting distracted by any of these tagging, etc. And one power I execute on a daily basis is the power to ignore. I have had the courage of saying that as long as I have the power to ignore something that does not bother me, the person who's going to comment is going to be safe. But the day you run short of that power is when the trouble begins. But so I have this incident to share, which is very heartening. I'm blessed with 2 kids, and when they were fairly younger, we took an African safari to Kenya. It's a beautiful country, and I would encourage anybody who likes wildlife to take the trip. So we were passing by, and then the biggest hunt is, of course, to look for a lion. Didn't realize that the maximum hunting is done by the lioness. So the lion protects the pride and the cubs and the entire breed, whereas the lioness actually goes out hunting. So the coach, he was telling us, the guide was telling us the lioness hunts, etc. And my little fellow suddenly stood up and said, my mother does that too. So she does put the table, food on the table every day. So I think these are some redemptions one should not forget, because that's what keeps us going. And once again, shortly, practically speaking, keeping focused on the results, the outcomes. Keep rethinking about why am I hired, or as an entrepreneur, why am I here? Maybe, for obvious financial results, for obvious social results in terms of employment. Can I make my team happier? So having that empathy and focus is, I guess, very important when it comes to, hostile times like these.
Yeah, may I add something to that? Now that you're saying that, I was thinking, that's very important, and also to learn, as you said, to learn to be there and just be quiet. Also learn that we cannot please everybody all the time, because we women tend to be more agreeable and more caring, nurturing, right? So sometimes we just have to stand our ground and to be firm. And that's something that we learn most of the time at home. And it's something that we can also start teaching our daughters, right? I have a son, I don't have a daughter, but I would teach her that for sure.
That's great. And I think the truth is, like, I think, Judith, you mentioned at the beginning of the conversation that companies don't want to lose out on talent.
Yes.
Similarly, businesses never want to lose out on the ones who are creating value. Like, they just don't, despite whatever the gender be, the race be, the ethnicity be, right? So, so it's a great stuff on that. Let's do a quick, rapid round here. I want each one of you who have reached success in tech, which is a tough game, and we know that. One quick leadership lesson, approach, mantra, strategy, whatever you want to call it, or whatever it is, about how you've made it where you've made it. You just spoke, so should we start with Judith? Yeah, okay, Judith, go ahead.
So the one word for me would be consistency. So stick to it. One of my bosses used to call me a pain in the neck because I would stand outside his office and I would not leave until I could talk to him, even if that meant standing out there for a couple of hours. So this is probably an exaggerated example. Don't test it at home without advice. But yeah, be consistent and be persistent, but have a vision and choose your battles. So if you're going to be consistent and spend all of that energy and resources on something, be sure that it's worth it and it's aligned with your vision. Even if you haven't tested that idea in the market, most likely if you believe in it and if it resonates with your true identity, then there is a need for it. It will find its path out there, one way or the other.
Consistency. Manuela.
Something funny. My company's name is T.E.C.K.Y.
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 T.E.C.K.Y, okay.
And by accident is an acronym for my advice, what I want to give. T from technology, be a technology expert on your area. E, it's entrepreneurship, build your personal brand and know your target group. C is connections. Technology is the easiest way to connect between men and women. If someone, an expert, a colleague, will talk good about you because you are able to solve a technical problem, also his boss will talk good about you, and later the boss of his boss will talk good about you. The other one, K, is from KPIs. Whatever you do, do it with KPIs. If your boss doesn't give you a KPI for a target appraisal, make your KPIs by your own. And after a while, every time when you say, okay, I reached this one, the KPI is good, after a while, he will say, okay, I take your KPI as the right one, or I give you the right KPI. But don't do something without a KPI, without hard facts that you reach something. And why? It's about your mindset. So you are as a woman in technology, you are like a world athlete preparing for Olympics. So you have to be aware how many hats you wear. That means you cannot be the perfect woman, the perfect mother, the perfect career, the perfect cooker, the perfect friends, or whatever. Stick with 3 or 4 areas and be aware how you split your resources. So embrace yourself, surround yourself with people who support your career, who support your mentality, and if they don't are on the same wavelength, it's better to skip them. So, T.E.C.K.Y.
T.E.C.K.Y, okay, we're not going to forget that. Tanya.
I think number one for me, and maybe in the last generation when there were non-tech businesses or non-tech value chains in businesses, I would have said people. But now on the other side, even though we're still interacting with people, I think I'd say listening skills, number one, are important for leadership. You cannot be a leader if you don't have followers. And for you to have followers, you need to be able to listen to them, understand them, be able to solve their problems. So that's number one. I'm going to keep it short because I know this is a rapid fire and because everyone else has already covered up everything else. So
build on it, eh? That's cool. Meenal, what about you?
So very quickly, I would say planning, prioritizing, and accountability are my mantra. I kind of, do this weekly, monthly, annual introspection about am I on the plan, and how much have I wavered, and what will it take to come back. But rarely does success come by chance, right? So we all have enough experience, collective experience amongst us. Rarely do things come even by plan, but there is a good chance that we'll succeed by planning instead without it. So yeah, planning, prioritizing, replanning, reprioritizing, and accountability are some of the key responsibilities I carry in every role that I play, not only on the professional front, but also elsewhere,
It's very interesting, I have these conversations with both men and women, and rarely have I found anybody coming up with a leadership trait that is actually gender specific. Everybody says similar things because eventually leadership is the game where whether it's a male athlete or female athlete, they're playing the same game. So that's pretty cool to note that actually about you. And Manuel, on the point about the athlete, so I'm going to ask a question about how an athlete would behave on a day when they've had a bad day, right? And in your careers, I'm sure bad days have happened, as have all of us, and bad days are not just one day. You get bumped off a promotion, you don't get included in conversations where you certainly should have had a play, or maybe you get surprised if you're on the board of something. Maybe you're the only person on the board and you get surprised, right? So what are your strategies to recoup, recharge, and get back at the game, all the while knowing it's not going to get easier? Tanya?
I'll start with this. I think I've faced this one a lot in my life because I was conditioned into sports and dance, and I'm conscious of time. So for me, sportsmanship was one of the first skills I learned, right? Or being a team player. Yet I found myself in positions right from when I was 7 years old, leading teams of people who were senior to me, younger to me, my age, etc., and pretty much, taking projects from 0 to 1. I follow something that sort of still keeps me sacrosanct to who I am. One is that every morning that I wake up, and this is part of your daily routine. So I keep my routine very sacrosanct. I could be in Dubai, in Goa, in Delhi, at workplace, working around the clock with a US company. But I would get up, and the first thing I do after I get up is I drink a glass of water. I go down, I meditate for 30 minutes. I do a little bit of physical activity. It could be dance, or I'd go out and play or do a little jog. I come back and I read. And then I write down my thoughts for the day. So that instantly clears my mind and sort of grounds me into the present. And post that, the day just flies by. So, and while I come back, I think one of the things that I always have practiced and found very useful is that I always detach myself from work. So I would take a 30-minute drive, either, before I come back and eat my dinner. That helps me just deal with or relegate those emotions that I might have had during a very taxing day. And I think the routine is what helps me do everything, really, no matter what the challenge is.
Great. Meenal?
So I took your question more, Barsha, in terms of how do you deal with setbacks, right? So a few things that, each one of us have experienced, irrespective of gender, is, when you are not getting that promotion that you expected, you're not getting that acknowledgement that you were so expecting or worked very hard with. So there were earlier days when, you'd rush to the washroom, cry your heart out, wear your makeup back, and be back on stage again. But gone are the days. I was having a very interesting conversation with Barsha during our introductory session, and we spoke about acknowledging our emotions, right? Whether they are of anger, frustration, hurt, as well as joy. I mean, to celebrate is natural, but at the same time, burying emotions which are negative was a trait that all of us subconsciously had. So I'm a big ambassador of the fact that speak out your emotion. Go have the courage to walk up to the stakeholder and ask him or her about why were you denied of that, so that at least that improvement can come in the next cycle, if the next cycle is valid. But that acknowledgement of that emotion and then dealing with that, it becomes far easier than letting that hurt stay and carry on further. So that's my way, of dealing with. That's the immediate way. The long term, of course, is getting into wellness, a little of meditation, a little of solo trips to understand yourself better. So yeah, some It can be a very small trip, just a drive of 30 minutes to a solo trip of 30 days. But one should look at recuperation and addressing that negative emotion at the right time.
Judith, would like to go
Yes,
first?
I fully agree with that. And I would also say, first of all, understand that not every day can be pretty. Sometimes it's okay. It won't be pretty. It's okay. You just have to go through it. And also what I keep in mind is that emotions are like the weather. Sometimes they come and go. And you cannot be that sort of ship that doesn't have, a strong engine that is going to cope with that weather. So you acknowledge the emotion, as you were saying, you deal with it, and you try to calm down. Breathing techniques are very useful for those purposes. And the most important resource I would say I've had, and that has worked for me, is discipline. So as an athlete, as athletes think, today, for instance, I feel tired, I don't want to go and train in the morning, but your discipline makes you go through it because you have a commitment to yourself. So that helps build your skin, makes it a little bit thicker, and then you can navigate through life in a healthier way, right? Yeah.
Interesting. Manuela.
Yes, these days I heard something very interesting about emotions and thoughts. They are visitor to our consciousness. I don't have thoughts, I don't have emotion, I have only visitors of my consciousness. So
Folks,
I
this is
saw
not
that.
a meditation panel. We'll just hear this. Okay.
Yeah, but this helped me indeed.
Yes,
This
of
helped me
course.
indeed
Yes.
very much because, to be honest, we see a very big achievements, but behind the achievements, you felt and felt and felt. You cry, and you don't know what to do. But as long as you stand up and go further, and you reach your goals, I think every successful person, doesn't matter woman or man, they have such kind of experience, and this is important to manage this.
That's true. Yeah.
That's really good to hear. I also liked how the conversation went from personal routines to more strategies, and yet it comes down to discipline. It comes down to consistency. In a sense of do something where you experience your own power. Because once you experience that, then you're back to feeling, okay, the game's tough, but here I come. And it's not just words. You need to experience something where the power is not coming from outside, it's coming from within you. So whatever that particular experience be or that process be, I just want to know how we're doing on time. I can see there's a little bit of time, and we would love to take questions if that's okay. Somebody raise a thumbs up, somebody who knows time better than I do. All right, so could we have a couple of questions maybe? And if you want it specifically of somebody, please raise it to them. And if you don't, one of us will just answer it. Yes, there's somebody in the back over there.
Maybe she can take my microphone.
No, that's okay. I think they have something there. There's lovely light falling on her, but she needs a mic. So. It's just somewhere in between, yeah.
I think I'm loud enough.
Go ahead.
You are audible.
The question is open to anybody. Do you deal with imposter syndrome? I think that's something that is quite common with all women who are in senior positions or in leadership roles or any responsibility that's given to you. How do you deal with it?
Okay, her question is imposter syndrome and how do you deal with it? Yeah, go ahead.
Hi, thanks for that question. So I'm going to share a little bit of a personal anecdote here. I'm actually specially abled. I have a 32% locomotor disability, yet you'll never see me limp ever in an office space. Now, I think that the journey has been one of imposter syndrome because I feel the need to hide it. And one of the reasons that I felt the need to hide it for a decade was mostly because when I was going through the healing process and when that accident really happened, I was pushed towards being overtly optimistic. Now, it did two things, right? It made me believe that my suffering was not I was not able to talk about my suffering with confidence, thinking that people will not understand it, as the system around me was actually imposing me to sort of, be strong and be confident and, oh, this is just pain, it'll go away, but I feel chronic pain 24/7. So that's one of the side effects of what I suffer. And secondly, the system really didn't have any policies around cases like me, and you can't really measure pain, right, can you? Which brings us back to discipline routines, etc. And so one of the ways that, and it's taken some time, one of the ways that I've dealt with it is that sometimes we can go into the analysis paralysis stage wherein we can go out and share or overshare too much with the wrong kind of people who will give us a lot of advice, pretty much like content watching on social media and then trying to fix ourselves. So firstly, if you can find a friend, a buddy, a therapist to go to really talk it out, I think that's one of the best things you can do. It's like a bias mentor, or someone who can just see your problems without having the bias that you have towards yourself, and maybe help you understand how beautiful and how full and how special you are in whatever way you are, right? That's one. And number two is that to train yourself out of it, there are some cognitive techniques that you must employ. Stand in front of the mirror. I teach this to all sales guys that I train. So stand in front of the mirror every morning like one of those poos from one of these very famous Bollywood movies and be like, I'm awesome in the morning. And that really helps through the day, through the imposter syndrome. Thank you. I hope that answered your question.
Great. We're out of time. Can't take questions, but all of us are here, so grab us outside if you do have a question. Yes, Madam, we're all yours, because we're not going to go and pick up a battle with the MC. Never. So, please. Great. Thank you very much. It was lovely, and thank you all panelists. Totally love your responses, and thank you so much for doing this.